This is Andrian.
And this is Ray. Welcome to the Talk Live podcast.
Every 2 weeks, we'll invite a new guest and
In every session, we'll dig into the life, relationships, and perspectives.
one question at a time.
Let's talk live!
Yay. Welcome to Talk Live podcast. This is Andrian.
This is Ray.
We've invited Tat Koon as our 8th guest. Woo! This time we're going to talk about quite a few things again, and the second part is going to be about Professor, and the first part, what we're going to talk about, Ray?
So, just want to give, our gratefulness to Professor Tat Koon. I think this is the first time that we get a professor, and if things go well, we can get more professors on board. So, really counting on you, Tat Koon. I think.
Okay.
So, I think in this episode, a few things we can touch upon, but I just want to give our audience some context and background on why we actually invited Tat Koon. So, current Tat Koon is leading our global business program in HKUST. So, to him, it's just a flagship program. But for Andrew and I, we think it's quite elite, and we're grateful to be part of it. But I think Tat Koon has went through, a very interesting life, right? You went to NTU. You're born and raised in Singapore. You did your military, and after that, you ventured into startup, right? You did your own platform kind of business, and then eventually, you decided to do your PhD in Carnegie Mellon, and then eventually you became a professor. So I think before episode 2, we're going to cover more about Professor and how you actually ended up in Professor. But I want the audience to really have an idea on who you are as a person in episode 1. So I give the stage to you to, briefly introduce about yourself, your story, anything interesting that, young people can learn about. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks guys for inviting me to this Talk La podcast. This is my first time being on a podcast. I'm pretty excited. So Ray has basically summarized my life in that 10 seconds intro. I think there's nothing much more that I can add, but just a very brief introduction, right? So as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not from Hong Kong. Even though I'm in Hong Kong, I'm a Singaporean, which is sort of a neighbor to where Ray came from.
Very good neighbors, right?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I do not want to create any diplomatic issues here, so we are good neighbors. So I grew up in Singapore. I did my undergraduate in Nanyang Technological University. And as a freshman back then, one of my classmates and I, we co-founded a platform, a B2B exchange. So that was in the late 90s, right? Right now, today, if you talk about doing a startup, doing a tech company when you're in college, it's like all cool and stuff. And you get a lot of students who are doing that right now. But back then, doing startup is like a crazy idea, right? Nobody know what it entails, what it involves. But we did that, and it was I think one of the I would say the highlight of my life, especially during that period. So I did that for a few years. Even after I graduated, I spent 1 year in the government agency in Singapore. But that's my day job, and at night, I will be spending time on the startup that we co-founded. And I did that until about 2007 before I moved to the US with my wife and my daughter to do a PhD somewhere in Pittsburgh. So I spent about 5 years in the US, and after 5 years, my PhD supervisor had enough of me, so gave me my degree and told me to get a job, right? And for some strange reason, UST decided to give me an offer. I do not know why, but I just grabbed it, and so that was like in 2012. So I've been here for the last about 8 to 9 years. I have great bosses, in case they're listening to this podcast. Great
students,
great
right?
students, very good students. 2 of the best are in the room right now with me. So I've been here for about 8 years, and this is where I am. Right.
I think I just picked up something that that we've picked up from other podcasts, different parts of your past will sort of affect your decisions going forward. And I picked up that I think it's like a refresher in terms of my memory, that you actually worked in a government job first. Did that have any impact to you on how to have the extra time to work on startup? Because I think in previous episodes we talked about we were contemplating you get a job that is very stable, like government jobs. You pretty much, just one small part of the organization. Work is very comfortable. You work 9 to 5, you get off. And then that gives you time to find, if you're ambitious enough, it gives you time and energy to work on things on the side and then slowly build it up and eventually becomes to something. So was that the case for you, or you already knew that you wanted to do startup, but then your parents were telling you like, oh, maybe you should work on something, very comfortable, and that's why you did the government job?
Well, I think yes and no. My parents were not that involved, right? So, for them, so long as I stayed out of trouble, do not do anything illegal, that's fine, right? Regardless of what else I'm doing. So they did not really encourage me to, get a stable job and so on. But I guess it's the context, right? Back then, again, right, doing a tech startup, running your own company fresh out from school isn't really the normal thing. Not like now. Now it is common. There's a lot of support, from the government, from incubators and so on, right? And there's a lot of mentors who can help young, graduates, to establish and to grow their company. But back then, it wasn't the case, So even though I joined a government agency, but the agency was actually pretty new the unit that I joined was actually pretty new. They were actually doing the G2B, government to business type of initiative. So it's also very, related, internet related. Very, we're talking about digitization. That was like maybe 20 years ago. So, which is something that interests me. Because of my own experience running, the startup for about 3 years. So, I thought, well, somehow, it fits quite nicely to what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do a B2B thing, but here's a G2B, so why not let's try it out, right? So that's what I did. So it wasn't really trying to buy time, for my own platform. The platform was, for some strange reason, it was in the black from day one, right? We were revenue generating and so on.
Oh, wow. Congrats on that, though.
Well, thank
from
you.
the beginning, right? Like,
I think,
how many people have
I
that
think we
luxury?
were, well, again, right? It's that was the early stages, the early days of the internet, at least back in Asia. So it's like the Wild Wild West. You can do whatever you do, you want to do, and it is all right. And there's a lot of opportunities. I think times have changed. It's a bit more challenging now, but we were just fortunate, I would say, in that regard. But the experience in the government agency was actually quite interesting, because I realized after a week or so of joining the agency that working in a government agency is not for me, right? So at least it's a form of self-discovery. So I stayed for about a year there, before I left. Yeah. And there's some reason why I stayed for a year, but that is maybe for another episode.
But what happened for your startup afterwards? Did you continue, or you pass on to your friend to continue your startup?
Right. So actually this is will be one of the mistake that I think I've made. I spent many years working with my partner, right, who was a classmate in the uni on the platform. But towards the end of my stay there were maybe some issues, some differences in terms of views and so on, and I decided to leave and to do my PhD. And I think I'm quite sad to say that we didn't really leave on a positive note. I should have handled the situation better. So somehow it did affect it, right? The relationship, the friendship, which is something that when I think about it, I think this is one regret. I should have at least I think handled it differently, handled it better. So but I was relatively young then, right? Rush and so on. But I think that's not really an excuse. Okay, but I think this is one thing that I've learned, that in terms of all these startups or business or your job, right? I think one important thing is actually the interpersonal relationship. I think that this is something that I have learned to value a bit more, and I'll be a bit more careful now with regards to how I interact with people and in terms of watching after the relationship, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can segue into the whole concept of mistakes and how it have sort of shaped you, and how you learn from the different experiences, right? So you did touch on about one mistake that sort of impacted you on how you deal with it, which explains why you're a great professor, right? I mean, you don't just really care about going through the
Well,
content in class?
after this podcast, I'm going to regrade
it's
your
fine.
grade, right, and see how I can adjust.
For the young adults out there,
Yeah.
HKUST, we're a very modern university, right? Our certificates when we graduate is all on the blockchain ledger, right? So nobody can actually tamper
Really?
and change.
Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is?
Yes, FYI, yeah. That's something, yeah.
Which blockchain is it on? Is it?
It should be Ethereum because smart contracts.
Yeah, but it dropped a bit.
Oh, that's
That's
for
another
another
story.
episode.
That's
Yeah,
another
basically,
story.
Andrian, don't be like Andrian. Buy FOMO into an investment, buy high, and then like it drop, and then I'm not sure whether
I haven't
you still
sold.
okay. So
I'm
that's good.
holding.
At least you're still holding.
Stronghold.
But anyway, going back to Tat Koon's mistakes, right? So one of it is like okay, you didn't really handle
Interpersonal.
the partnership
Yeah.
side of things, right? Yeah. But is there any other defining mistakes that you carried forward to your life, and then if you did things differently, what kind of learnings basically from your different mistakes?
Well, there are lots of mistakes, tons.
I mean, we're all humans, right? Yeah.
Right. So I'm not sure which one to pick.
Just pick the ones that weren't-
juicy.
No, that will keep your you can still continue doing your job, and then
Yeah.
your wife is happy, your family is okay.
Right.
Whatever you're comfortable to share.
Not too far.
Well, I'm not sure about mistake, but if I
Yeah.
were to if I were to relive my 20s or my 30s again, there would definitely be some things that I would I think do differently. I think one thing is maybe is trying to explore more things, right? When I was younger, so at least right? What you like, what you do not like, what your passion is about. I think I do know what my passion is. In my early 20s, right? I know what I wanted to do. So like, joining, working in the university, something that I have been that I've thought about, right, for quite a while. Even when I was just out from college, right? It's just that I took a bit long, before I submit my application. But I knew that was something I wanted to do for some reasons. But I think if I could go through that period of time again in my life, I would maybe try to explore more things, right? You know what you like, you know what you do not like. That's only after you have experienced it, right? So I think like what you guys are doing now, right? Doing this podcast, for just 3 of us listening in, that's still a good thing, right? Because after a while you realize, well, this is something that's fun, right? How we can bring this further, or maybe after a while you realize that this is maybe just a pure waste of time, right? But at least you know that, right? And you can try to avoid the same thing in future. So I think one thing that I would encourage the young people who are listening is try to explore more, right? Do not just stick to the same standard path that your friends or your peers are doing, okay? But try to explore, go into different things, find adventures, explore the unexplored. I think that would be something that would be real cool, and I think that would just open up your perspective of things. Yeah.
I think before expanding on that point, like if there's one thing that you want, like you decided later in life, when you actually have everything settled in with your life, right? What was that one thing that you discovered that you actually really enjoy and could have been part of your career? Because I do know that you do invite a lot of guest lecture for your MBA course or even your undergraduate course, right? Yeah. So what was the any industry or any particular job that when you see them presenting or based on your experiences that you felt like, oh, if I actually ventured that when I was younger, I would have actually experimented even.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a good question because I have the answer, right? No, I think I'm actually quite happy and quite content with my own experiences so far, right? Doing a startup and now being a sort of a professor in a university. Why? I think I'm someone who do not like structure, right? This is why my 1 year in the government agency was I wouldn't say painful, right? But I was doing something that I don't really truly enjoy that much. I think it's impactful, it's important things that we are doing. I had great colleagues. I have people who really helped me a lot during that 1 year in my work. But by and large, I didn't enjoy the type of structure within the type of agency. Too bureaucratic, too hierarchical, so doing startups and being like a professor is very different because it's very unstructured. So if you're running a startup, you know there are problems and there's new problems every day, but you don't know what a solution, right? So that's what I mean by unstructured problem. And you have to find your own ways, come with the best solution. Doing research is the same thing, right? When we're doing research like right now, we are trying to find answers to a new research question that nobody have an answer to. And you're trying to find ways to either test a hypothesis, collect data, and so on. So I like all this unstructuredness, in life, so when I listen to other people's job, of course, there are some jobs that are quite similar, say consultant, for instance, right? You're also dealing with your clients with different set of problem. But am I envious of them? Yes and no. I think the yes part is they get paid much more than I do. Perhaps that's the part that I'm envious about. But in terms of the job scope, the job nature, what we do, and the type of impact that we create, I think what I'm doing now, I'm actually quite happy about it, right? There's opportunity for me to influence lives, young people's life, I hope in a positive way, right? And I think not a lot of jobs actually give you this opportunity. Yeah.
I think you sort of like, I think the reason we're here, because you sort of influence us in a positive way, right?
Yeah, we
like
you only say that because I'm here
okay,
right now.
exactly.
Right?
I'm gonna, because when we had dinner, I just said because of Professor Tat Koon, I picked IS. I picked IS as my second major, and I never regretted it because I still use it till today.
But it's not even in the tech industry.
I'm not even in the tech industry. I still use it.
Yeah.
So I think Tat Koon had made a positive impact on my, and probably for our lives.
I think for me, it's I really enjoyed the way he did his lectures. It's very different.
Yeah.
I mean, he's very unconventional. So I can definitely see like how elements of unstructuredness to it, yet structured, right? So I think professor is like you sort of have to follow the semester and everything, but you have the own flexibility to structure your course, and every semester you can do it differently. Yeah, so I really like that, and not because of Tat Koon that I decided to do information system. It's because I think that was the future, and everything else was not as interesting compared to information systems.
You guys are being too nice. No,
I'm talking about the course, not even.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, but I think just wrapping up on what Tat Koon have mentioned on his previous mistake about not trying, but he did try a lot of different things. So I think the main takeaway to young adults out there, and I think that was sort of my approach, and I believe Andrew and myself have this aligned, that when I come into university, it's all about trying as many different things that I could possibly try. So I did like Dragon Boat, I did a lot of different social clubs, activities, courses, whether I like it or not. Like, even though we're such a grade centric, but I still did my best to try different like entrepreneurship course and some philosophy course, which wasn't
right.
So
I think the university is the best time for young people to try out things, right? Because the opportunity cost is low. I mean, you do have your grades to worry about, but apart from that, there's nothing much to worry, not much of a concern, and you can try. If you make mistake, it's fine, right? If you make mistake in the classroom, everybody laugh about it, but after the class, after the course, nobody will remember that. So I think this is what I always encourage students to do, right? The university is the best time for you to make mistakes so that you can learn. I think for young people who are out in the working society, that's a bit more challenging, right? You have your own day job, you have your bosses to report to, you have your boyfriends or girlfriends to report to, or right? Time is an issue, right? So but having said that, I think it's still important, right, to find pockets of time and opportunity to do different things. I think that's the best time, because once you hit my stage where you have wives or more wives, kids and so on, right? You have your spouse to think about and stuff, right? There'll be more constraints, and the opportunities, even if it's there, you will be a bit more reluctant, right, to pursue it. So I think you guys are in a way, in the golden age, right? Of course, we are going through difficult times, but if you think about this, every generation has its own difficult time, right? When I graduated from college, we had the that's like the early 2000s, right? There's a 9/11. There's the SARS after that. Before that, when I was in college, I was the Asian financial crisis. So we actually went through what that's going on right now, and but we survive, right? I think no matter which era you're born in, there's always issues and challenges, and it's how you make the best out of it, right?
I mean, I completely agree, and thanks for making the point. And I particularly resonate at the time. I think in university, really low opportunity cost, right? Especially if you have a scholarship, or if you're, because I mean, when you're young, right? If your parents can afford it, then I think that's good. But I think one interesting point for people that are still in university, perhaps for those that are working already, is fine. Yeah, it's like, I think it's a great place to also identify what kind of person kind of spouse that you want to be with, right? Because honestly, like in university, there's a lot of, different, it's a great place to meet girls, and for girls to meet guys too, right? At least that's my experience.
I didn't know it was going to segue into this.
Well, I mean, if you would talk about it that way, then the university does have a social responsibility, right? But I don't think that is what the university is about. It's about knowledge, okay? But create new knowledge and the transfer of knowledge. But I think, having said that, for students who are coming into the university, especially to UST, do not come in with the objective that, okay, I want to find my spouse and so on. But get to know people, right? Get to know people of whether it's, I mean, if let's say you're a guy, right? Make more friends, both guys and girls, friends of different culture, different background. I think this is a melting pot, right? Because once you join the workforce, and as you grow older, that you're just missing
with the same group of people.
Exactly, right? The homophily, right? You're just missing people who are like you, right? Same interests, same career, same sector, and that become a bit more constraining. And in a way, I think this is not too ideal for the society, because when that happens, there's too many segregation, right, of different people, and conflict could occur. That's one. But some sectors may receive not enough attention, may need help, but that would fall off the radar, right? But once young people right now start to have this desire to get to know different people, explore different viewpoints and so on, I think that would just help the world to be a much better place.
Do you think that COVID sort of like constrained that though? Because COVID, they restrict like physical classes, and being on Zoom mostly, it's very hard to know new people basically for university. Is that an obstacle?
I'm trying to think of a response that would not get me into trouble, right? So yes and no. Okay, of course, there's bound to be some restriction, constraints. I think that the face-to-face, right, the being in the same room like what we are doing now does make a difference, right? But I think we cannot use that as an excuse, right, of not doing things, of not interacting with people, of not helping people who are in need just because we cannot see them, for instance. This is a constraint that happens to be here, so let's find ways to overcome that. I think if you think about what UST, I'm not sure about other universities, but I'm pretty sure they are also very active in terms of finding ways to help students to engage with each other. They are trying to find ways to mobilize the students to help the society, right, in times like this. So I think this is about us raising raising the bar, raising our standard, to step out, right, and try to make a difference. Yeah,
for sure. I was just talking to Ray and other friends, saying that this generation of university students are a bit of in a pickle because they couldn't even go on exchange, and they couldn't see their friends or their classmates face to face. It has a challenge, but I totally agree that it doesn't give you an excuse. It just gives you more incentive to do more and to reach out to your group mates or to your friends, or hang out on your own, just not on campus or just outside of campus. But I'm gonna ask a question, which is completely not related to what we talked about, is because just now we talked about you starting your own business. You went to got your PhD in the US. If you could go back 20 years, what advice would you give yourself back then? The only one advice, you only have 1 minute to give yourself one advice. What would you say to yourself?
That's not a good question.
That's a question that Professor likes to ask students, right?
Now we switch our role.
That's not a good question because I do not have the answer prepared for that. It's interesting, right? No, if I were to go back, what would I tell myself? In a way, I think I was fortunate. Again, right before I jump to the answer, I must say I'm quite fortunate and quite blessed in terms of when I grow up. I mean, my family wasn't say rich or well-to-do, but we get by, right? But I think my parents, my friends, my girlfriend, type of thing, they were pretty supportive of what I do, and I was always on the. I mean, I was a troublemaker. Okay, if you look at my grades, from primary school onward and so on, and you extrapolate, right, you wouldn't imagine that this person would have scores good enough to do a PhD and to be a university professor, right? So I'm always in trouble academically. I'm not that interested and so on, and I'm fooling around more than being serious and so on. But having said that, right, I have been always be on the right side. Okay, of not doing anything seriously wrong. So I think once you have all this parameter and you can just explore and do anything, right, you want. I think that is the best thing to really find your own passion. So I think I would just go back to my what I've mentioned, right, that if I'm your age, right, which is 25,
mid-20s, late 20s.
Okay, I would say go with an open mind and explore, right? If it's about going to a different city, work in a different job, go into a different sector, if you had a passion for those things, right, just go, right? Do not be too do not try too hard to fit into a certain mold that the society, that the parents, that your peers expect of you, or that you expect from yourself, right? I think that would be sort of a grave mistake, right? So in that regard, I don't think I have. I think I have enjoyed how my 20s were. I have good friends around. I had good relationship, except for here, some blips here and there. But overall, I think I did enjoy my young adults time and the things I do, right. I do feel that is they were quite fun, right. The startup was one that I did, and because it's a startup, there was like a lot of flexibility in terms of my time. So I was quite involved with my church back in Singapore. I went on 1 or 2 mission trips. Serve in a few ministries, right? So this is very outside, right, my so-called profession or my interest. But those actually brought me more joy. So like even now, I'm still in contact with some of the people that from overseas that we get to know through all these different ministries, and I think this is really a blessing that I would say, yeah. So
yeah, and I, really happy to hear that, and I think that it's actually some key advice to young people. I think just to wrap things up, to not keep it too long, right, like the key takeaway at least that we got is like really have an open mind and try as many different things. Obviously they need to be ethical, right? Depends what kind of life you want to live, but I mean this podcast is to make sure young adults find their passion,
positive
right?
change.
So whatever that you go through, have an open mind. Don't have a plan, but at the same time be adaptable when opportunities come about. Yeah, don't always like think too much and say no, like, oh, you can't do it, you need to travel a different place. So just have an open mind to try different pockets of things. Let's say even if you have a full-time job, just have that mindset that after work or weekend to experiment different things, because sometimes you might find fulfillment in those. Like for example, for Tat Koon's case, it's like you did your church service, and that brings you more joy than sometimes in your day job. And who knows, I think in today's world, like we live in a digital era, a lot of things that you do on the side, you can actually
Turn it into the
monetize
main-
it when
the
you have
main
a
thing,
following enough, a following that's big enough on the side, and that eventually becomes something that you fulfill, and at the same time, it becomes your
passion.
Right.
your income. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think with that, let's shall we wrap up the episode?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much for watching and listening to our podcast. You can also always subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can also watch us on YouTube. If you like this episode and if you find it useful, share it to your peers. And thank you for listening once again.
And thank you, Tat Koon. Stay tuned for episode 2.
Talking about his becoming a professor. Yes, bye.